Well, we are going to stand before you because, frankly, I did a lot of in front of the camera stuff over the years, 1,800 television shows, and Treena produced every single one of them, except except for 12, which I got in before she started. And that's where our story is going to begin, because it begins in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, in 1960, they didn't have television up until April the 13th. And on April the 13th, they decided they would start. And April the 14th, I was on television. And I was actually recruited by the Air Force to go on. They said, we want you on television to cook something. And I said, no. And I said, we remind you that you're a serving officer in the Air Force and you'll do just what you're told. The physical training instructor has sprained his ankle, and you're on. So I went on, made an omelette, and that was it. It was regarded as the best live show to date. They were the and by the way, you'll never meet another television person who had a 100 rating. But that's me. There were 50 television sets in the country on that particular day. Well, anyway, so fast forward about 3 months, and I have a regular TV show between Peyton Place and The Avengers at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, of all things. And I'm so looking forward to Treena seeing what I would be able to do. And we were sitting in our small apartment in Wellington, New Zealand. And it got to a certain part of the program, which I was really looking forward to her seeing. And she begins, ah! She goes like this, you do not scream domestically in New Zealand. It doesn't happen there. And so, and I was mortified at this response that she had to my program. And she said to me, you, and this is quote, dead quote, you are the most unutterably boring man in the entire world. We had been married for 5 years, so I'm 26 years of age. You can just imagine how that feels. So I turn around to her and say, all right, if you're so clever, why don't you produce the show? 12 episodes, Treena goes down to the New Zealand Broadcasting House, says, you're ruining my husband. He is actually quite amusing in parts. And why don't you just let me give you some advice about how to handle him? So that's where it started. It eventually wound up as the Galloping Gourmet series, where some of you have seen that. This is called A Misspent Youth. And what you did, you saw a very interesting thing take place. I really wanted to get you, as the viewer, around a table with your friends to eat food and celebrate it and have a wonderful time. I couldn't imagine anything more exciting and more fulfilling than that. That's what I wanted to do with life. Treena, on the other hand, said, if you really want to teach somebody, you have to entertain them first. You have to get there with entertainment, and then you can have your information. And I demand from you the first 6 minutes of the show. After that, you can do more or less what you like. And so that was the deal that we made. So, my darling, thank you for the stress and the tension between our lives. Tell them another 3 things.
Another 3 things?
Yes. Oh, sorry about that, but we've only been married 54 years, so yes. Let me sit down.
What have I got to say now?
Yeah, you're going to give the 3 reasons, which I wrote down on an index card.
I know, but I left it behind.
And you've lost the card.
Yes.
Fine. Okay.
Now, can I just say something?
Yeah, you can do what you like in 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yes. Well, I did have 6 minutes of his show, so I'm going to have 3 minutes now. It's getting to 5, 4, 3, 2.
You don't have to wait until 1. It gets round to the top.
There we go. Now I'm just starting. First of all, the 3 things, actually there were 4. Actually, there were many more than that. But he wrote down 3. And I'm an obedient wife. I always do what I'm told. So the first thing was, we married. No, I was born. You couldn't have married me if I hadn't been born.
Well, but that's true.
No.
Yes.
Right. So we met, no. I know one of them was 1944. He's really sweating here. I have to tell you this. It's not fair, is it? But he's been wonderful. We were married in 1956. We met in 1944.
That's right.
So Graham was 11 and I was 10. And it was love at first sight. It was. I mean, you think we've been married 54 years and we've been in this business? Yes, 54 years. The other thing is that I have really been a pain. First of all, I don't cook. Would you? I wash up. I do his laundry. I fold his underwear very nicely. And I'd go on for a long time. Don't get worried. Hey, he's not listening. Oh, you am? Well, don't get worried. I will finish. Right, I will. There are things he has saved my life, I have to say this, at least 3 times. Now, do I have to tell them why?
You can tell. If you don't have to, madam.
I had diabetes. I've had a heart problem. That was because he was always feeding me fat food. But he saved my life by making me eat fruit and vegetables. And I'm very healthy now. I do have diabetes, and I do have to take insulin, but that's not my fault, and it's not his fault. It's just one of those things that are hereditary. And I'm sure there are people here that are saying, that's not hereditary, that's because you was fat. Well, I wasn't fat. I am now because of the insulin.
Come and sit down. Every single program that we did, Treena graded me after the show was over. So it was A+ to C. And one particular occasion, I did a souffle, which to my great surprise stood up, and it stayed up. It was magnificent souffle. It had some sauté prawns in it and bourbon and a wonderful melting cheese souffle that it was, and Baveuse perfectly in the center with a silver spoon just... Oh. And I couldn't wait to get back to my grade. It was a C, and the reason why was because it was boring. And I've almost never forgiven you for that, but aside from that. Okay. You guys, Treena was going to say to you in detail that she's had a heart attack, a stroke, she's diabetic, hypertensive, and she's married to me. That's the big deal. Now, when you meet somebody, when she's 10, I was 11, she was my first girlfriend. I'm actually her second boyfriend. But we went down to the village bridge, tore his letters up and dumped them in the stream, and he went off round the bend. So that was Tony. So the issue between us is I love this woman. And so because I love this woman, and I've given this phone call, she's had a stroke, and then 4 months later, the heart attack. I've waited in 2 emergency rooms for her to die. She didn't. She came through it. And now I am a gourmet. So what do I do about that? Well, so far, at this point in time, I have cooked 41,000 meals for this woman here. The first 20...
And I've washed them up.
Yeah.
And he makes the mess.
The first... Thank you, darling. The first... Just keep it up. The first 23,000 meals, I considered life from a dotted line around the neck upwards, and it was sensual. The food had to taste. It had to have splendid aromas and colors and textures. It had to ooze across the table. Clarified butter, tenderloins flamed in Armagnac, drowned in cream over the top. Maybe a collop of foie gras just slipped underneath, just when yes. And all of this was marvelous. Then, of course, she had her experience. And then all of a sudden, I went ape for this woman that I loved. And it was dotted line still there, but it was all about this. And cross this out, because this was essentially wicked and not to be trusted at all. And it was like dining on the backside of the moon. This was not a good experience. In fact, our son, who was 12 years old, said, "Dad, if it used to be such fun eating with you, but if you're going to keep this up, do you think you could find another place to eat?" 12 years of age. And I told him that you'll be very grateful for this, because you will never suffer from bowel cancer. I was very big on bowel cancer at the time. And he said, "Dad, I'm 12. We guys do not sit around at school discussing bowel cancer." I didn't get it. But anyway, the result of all of this was that one day I finally got it when Treena flung bologna all over our kitchen floor, threw stuff into the trash can and yelled, "There's nothing left in the home to eat with you, nothing!" And we lived next to Kirk Douglas and Liberace down the road. And I was concerned for my reputation. I picked up the bologna, put it on one side, and decided, okay, I'll cook for me what I want to eat, and I'll cook for you just what you want to eat. That was the harbinger of the big compromise I made in order, before Treena had the stroke and heart attack. So it wasn't as if I didn't know that I had made a compromise. I finally wound up with the idea that the dotted line was wrong and it ought to be a whole body principle. Now what I'm dealing with today is this. In the old days, as you saw from perhaps the introduction there, I used to run in, grab a glass of wine, jump over a dining room chair, wind up in the bar, tell a joke, and then cook. You can do that if what you are cooking is a tenderloin with collop of foie gras and cream. It goes very well together. But you can't leap over a chair, go in and talk about using a teaspoonful of olive oil. It really doesn't seem to make the same sort of... I've tried. We've done over 1,000 television programs trying to make food more exciting and wonderful and yet good for you. And so we've done those. We've done it. And I have to tell you, I think I'm a failure. I have done it again and again and again and again. And we've had audiences, and the audiences have laughed, but the audiences have been minuscule. The cookbook sales, when it used to be full of fat, went out by the truckload and now go out by the odd couple of books a week. And so therefore, I stand in front of you saying, what on earth can be done? I know what I do for Treena. I know what she does for me. She's willing. And I try the very best I can to serve her with stuff that I know that she loves. And I have now 20 years under my belt cooking for her, 18,000 meals I've actually cooked for her. And I've written them down. Every single meal, I have a record of what that meal is. And every single day, I've got all the blood pressures and blood sugar work and everything else. I also have a direct relationship with 89 really celebrated physicians who have spoken into my life and into Treena's life at the same time. She is now 180% less likely to have another stroke and heart attack because of her condition. So that makes me feel very happy that we did it just between us. But that's us. That's my little ripple effect and her willingness, and we've done it together. So how do you communicate that out? Just like you, I'm sure, I can't help but see today that we have a health cost containment issue in front of us. We've got the Senate and the House debating this thing endlessly at the present moment. How do we contain these costs? Part of it's the medical profession, but part of it's us. Part of it is the consumer. Part of it is the consumer confronted with what Mark shared with us earlier today. It's an onslaught. It is a massive mud flow that flows through our culture. How do we say no to something, yet it's so delicious and such a reasonable price? How do we stop that in its tracks? And you know, I really don't know, but I have a work in progress. And I've shared with my good friend Mike now over our own table as I cooked for you. It's difficult cooking for a musician somehow. I grew all the plants for his meals, so I had an intimate experience, you know, like Cameron was talking about his organ, so I had my carrots. And it was, I enjoyed it, and it was a reasonable meal. But so we talked about this one. Maybe it could be possible to engage you, every single one of you, in an experience like raining on a lake. When a raindrop hits the lake, it forms a little circle, and another one drops side by side and forms another little circle. So you get this myriad of people interconnecting with each other. What if we were all to tell, like Peter was sharing with his book, what if we all started to share something we did, just one thing we did to make a change in the way we eat and we live? And then had a place where we could share that together. A place which would be the same sort of thing that Treena managed with me. How can it be entertaining and at the same time inform? Could it do that? And then could it facilitate? Could it go beyond that? So this is your chance. Nobody has seen this before. I only saw it today for the very first time. I'm a visionary type of person. I see things in my mind. And then I have to have artists who come together to do this. And this artist is Emily. And she is just a wonderful gal whose mother was one of the people I dragged out of the audience to sit down and have a meal on television in the old Galloping Gourmet days. Talk about serendipity, how that comes around. And she has done this animation. And I want you to see this animation now, and let's see whether we could understand how maybe you and I could contribute to our better health as a nation, one to the other, using this as a potential for a website. Let's cue that. I want to introduce you, for the very first time ever, Titus the tugboat. Titus the tugboat is our decision to be able to make a choice about something we're going to buy. It's a sort of an impulsive thing. I would like that. I really want to eat that, and I'm going to have it now. And he tows behind him Qual, which is a barge called Quality of Life. You see, Titus is the cause, and the barge is the consequence. Everything has a cause and then a consequence. Now, we're just going to take a little trip down the New York Barge Canal from Buffalo down to New York City. There are 57 locks on this little barge canal. We're only going to look at 7 of them tonight. But he just goes down and finds the lock, gives a toot, toot, like this to be able to open the lock gates, and then begins to tow in the quality of life that he has. And the first lock is a lock of portions. He sits there in the lock experiencing life, and the quality of life drops down, and the gate opens, and he's on his way down to New York City. Okay. Now, the concept here is that we might have 7 locks altogether, and that they may represent 7 ways in which we can actually have the quality of our life reduced by something that we don't understand very well. For example, if I was to just take that into the portion lock itself, and we just call that portion sizes, if I was to go in there and order a bagel, and the bagel came out to be one of those, instead of what I had been used to as one of those, I might say to myself, it's only 50 cents more, and it seems so much more. That's a pretty good buy, and it's a nice bagel, and I would eat it. I wouldn't feel like I was going downhill in that decision. I would simply sit there and eat it, and by the time the gates opened, I would continue on horizontally, but I had a new way of looking at bagels. That was now the size of bagel that I had considered and had thought was value for money. And the next time I go to another restaurant and encounter a little one, I might snort a little bit about myself about that not being as good as the bagel that I had before. We've done that over the past 15 years to such an extent that if you were to cut a cross-section through our life and the food we eat until today, you'd have an increase of about 900 to 1,200 calories, but exactly the same order of exactly the same food, except that the portions have raised. So it's not a surprise that we've gone up with it. So I don't want to be in the business of criticizing those who do it. That's business. That's the way they manipulate us when we fit into that log. What I do want to do is I want to speak into that situation saying, this is what we used to do and this is what we do now. I just want me to do that for you. And I would love it for you to do that for me, so that we would have a collection. It's never been possible before we had this kind of interaction and social dialogue that we have today. It's a real possibility that we, the people, could be able to integrate our wise decisions with one another instead of have to be we, the puppets. And I don't mean, when I say puppet, I don't want to be manipulated in that lot by larger portions. I'm fed up with it, actually. And I want to my fellow citizens, my neighbor, to put their 5 cents, I used to say 5 cents, 2 cents, I'm sorry, their 2 cents worth in until I rise in an understanding about what is happening to me, and then go forward to a better quality of life. Now, here's the things that need to perhaps be linked together. Portion sizes. You know and I know our portion sizes are right out of whack. So I don't need to say much more to you than that. Secondly, plant food. We are told that somewhere between 7 and 9 servings, perhaps even 11 is the latest research, would be really healthy for us. We eat an average of 3.5. We're simply not making it in that. That's almost a 300% increase, you guys.
And one of those is chips.
Yes. Oh, yes, exactly. One of the 3 is chips, is French fries. I have grown a garden for the first time in my life this last year up in the Pacific Northwest. I have never met a plant that I couldn't kill. I'm literally a walking herbicide. And I had 38 plants which grew abundantly, and I've had the best possible time. I got out there and I dug and I used a back that I thought couldn't make it, and I was totally thrilled with this. Not only did I cook for you that day, but I actually pulled up some plants, half a hundredweight, took them at 10 o'clock in the morning, took them down to the food bank at 12, and by 6, it was in 100 homes in our valley where we have shut-in people. I knew they got the stuff that I grew from a seed and nurtured and watered and pulled up and gave to somebody else, and that was terrific. And that's just one little idea. I thought, go ahead. Yes, I know. It's fine. Yes, I'm perfectly.
It's gone.
Actually, the whole clock went off altogether.
Yes, it did.
I was thinking Mike was just prepared to let me go until breakfast. We went to the vegetables. I have a new experience, apart from Mark Bittman's magnificent book on how to cook everything vegetarian, which is really an excellent book, and I have that, and you must sign it, Mark, okay? Yes, you must, good, okay. I have really, really had such fun doing it. But then there's planning. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you and I haven't got a clue what we're going to cook for dinner that night. 74% of us don't know what we're going to have for dinner that night. That's a wonderful opportunity for marketers to come in and cloud the issue by making us convenience-orientated people. The next thing is peace at the table. We have turned meal times into media times. We've turned the table into a trampoline. It should be more like a hammock. We should put time aside and value the meal we have instead of obliterating the thing and eating at the same time as pounding away on a computer. For God's sake. Is life to be that way? We've now adopted a new principle, which is we're going to live at the speed of life. And that means carving out my meal times and not doing anything else at a meal time except having a relationship, especially with business people. Don't talk business over meal times. Set business around over coffee, but talk relationship with somebody if you want a good business relationship. Okay. I understand that, sweetheart, but...
no, I'm not saying that.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I will. Yes, I'm coming to that. I'm nearly done. You know that it can't be very many more locks because I've already been through 5. We then go through to physical stamina. You can start all right, but can you finish? And I find myself giving up before I should have done. But this last year in getting outside and getting in the garden has given me a chance to be able to replenish that kind of stamina. And then there's the pharmaceutical. Treena has had 11 pharmaceuticals prescribed to her. She's now down to 3. So we have worked back through the pharmaceuticals, understanding exactly what each one did, and asking the question, what then could we do to replace the pharmaceutical or diminish its use? I'm not saying don't use pharmaceuticals, it's wonderful things, but don't take an antacid before you go for an Italian meal. Just go and suffer, and then you'll understand that you can't eat that way anymore. Right. And finally, you guys, the biggest thing that's ever happened to us in our lives is, and you might like to try and find your pulse at the moment. It's been a long day, and you probably still have one. I've just found mine. 1, 2, 3. It's about 60 beats to the minute. Every third time my pulse goes, a child under the age of 5 dies. Right now. When that hit me, it hit me like a ton weight. And I thought, what can we do to live less consumptively? And maybe just look at the stuff that harms us, the things that when we exceed the feed limit, if you like, and then convert that to a resource that could heal somebody else. So in the last 20 years, Treena and I have actually tabulated that. For everything we haven't eaten, we've made a little notation, and we've transferred that to a separate account, which we call the outdulgence account. We came to an indulgence, stopped it, and transferred it out. We've now shifted $38,000. I know it's not Bill Gates or anything, but for us, we were being harmed by the very things that we were converting into a resource for other people. So we got better, and they got better at the same time. And we think that that's a kind of a fun idea to be able to put into this lock system. Because at the moment, we've found all kinds of wonderful new ways of giving money, such as Haiti and the text messaging method. Wonderful. But is it a bit like Alka-Seltzer giving? Is it plop, plop, fizz, fizz, what a relief it is. I've made my commitment, that's it. It isn't until you've walked really closely to someone who desperately needs your help that you realize how much your help is worth. And then you find your sector in the community where you can really make a difference and focus your attention on that one and give in depth both of yourself and of your lifestyle. So the whole idea is to form a website, to get the little tugboat going, for all of you to make a contribution to it. I have not a clue how that can be done. But if you've got a brilliant idea about how, then let's do this together. Let's give a chance for us to be we the people rather than we the puppets. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
I think you should.
Yes, now I would like to, with the water guy, you remember Scott? And it's Graham's 76th birthday today. So would you all give $76 and we can And we can send it with Scott to make lots of little waters for people.
Okay.
Cameron?
Cameron?
Oh, I got to tell you one quick thing. The 76th birthday is called the trombone year. You can still make a lot of noise, but you feel like you're sliding backwards.
That's okay.
All right, Cameron.
Oh, look at this. What? Wonderful.
Invisible candles. Here's the deal. We ran terribly late. I'm terribly sorry. It's a carrot cake. I'm sorry, Mark. It's an organic carrot cake.